Hello. Okay. So, hello. I am making this video in response to a Reddit post asking for advice on getting set up with your controller for the first time, and specifically to do with healing and a lot of healing buttons. So, I'm gonna jump into it. This is gonna be a bit of a ramble. I don't plan to really cut and edit any of this, so apologies if there's some back and forth. I do plan on using my mouse to help show and denote like specific areas of the menus and things. So keep an eye on the mouse when I'm uh, talking about things because I will probably be using it to gesticulate a little bit. So, um, if you've not used controller before, you will need to turn it on in the system settings. So in character configuration, there's this giant button that is gamepad mode versus mouse mode. And as you can see, it does change a fair bit when you move things over. My camera is set differently for gamepad mode versus mouse mode, etc. The other things that you will need to change is, let me just quickly flip through these. Oh, this will be helpful, the filter customization, but for the moment I'm going to skip over that because we're just talking about the hotbars. Then obviously the mouse stuff does not apply because we are no longer using mouse. And under UI settings, HUD. Maybe it's not. And fine. Oh, it's under hotbar settings. What am I talking about? Of course it'd be under hotbar settings. Okay. So what I have set up is, I'll just show you what my other ones are too. You have to enable cross hotbar. And what cross hotbar means is it means this section here at the bottom, this center bit, where there's the line in between it, and then there's the set of four, set of four, set of four, set of four. And then these are directly relational to your triggers and then your, face buttons and D-pad buttons. So if I hit triangle on my PlayStation controller while holding down the right trigger, I get light speed. If I hit triangle while holding down left trigger, I get my draw. And to get to these outside ones, we'll cover that in a moment, but just to talk straight about the cross hotbar, a lot of people will look at this and say, oh, well, that's only 16 buttons. How is that ever going to work? And the reason this works is because if you hold down the bumper, so R1, I'll have to exit this menu in order to do that. If I hold down R1, you can see over my health bar, which let me move my health bar for you real quick. Where are you? Parameter bar. Let's get this out of the way. If I hold down the bumper, you can see it says change set and it shows a number according to each of these. So if I press 1, nothing will change because I'm already on the first hotbar. But if I press 2, I have a whole nother hotbar here. And I can swap through every single hotbar that I have. And it highlights it, which is very helpful. But there is essentially this way to sort of quick swap to a specific hotbar at a specific moment by holding down, again, R1 plus one of these buttons. Then you let go of R1 and you can then interact with it like you would normally. Whenever you draw your weapon, it's going to bring you back to hotbar 1. So keep that in mind. If you have something that's a combat thing on a separate bar, and then you draw your weapon, it's going to put you back to hotbar 1 because it believes that's where most of your stuff will be. So going back to, okay, that's system. I want a character. Going back to the cross hotbar settings. I have mine set to always display cross hotbar. If I wanted to, I could say cross hotbar help. And that just shows the name of your spells or abilities in each of the slots. That can be helpful when you're first starting out. And then I also have enabled duty action input, but this we can talk about that later if you need it. And edit mode is very important. So say I decided I don't want light speed in that spot anymore. I can hold down right trigger and press for my PlayStation controller, that would be the touchpad, which brings up this edit hotbar, which I like to call this a tray, because essentially what you're doing is you're loading the tray with the thing you want to edit. And now you can either choose a new place to put it. I could put it in place of my draw over here, or I could choose that I would like to, say, delete it by putting the same input in. So let's say I'm going to delete my light speed. So I'm going to hold down right trigger and press triangle, and it'll tell me, do you want to delete this from hotbar? And you can also hit square or your back button to exit out of it, and you press the pad button again to exit the tray. So that is how you can get to that. I have a hotkey button that goes straight to actions and traits menu. I can show you how to do what I just did to get to that in a moment. But when you are adding stuff to your bars, you don't have to use a mouse to click and drag them onto your bar. If you wanted, say, pretend I had deleted light speed off my bar. In fact, let's just do that. I could now add light speed to my bar. While pressing it will just actually use the ability light speed. You can use the context menu, which on controller is your left face button. On a PlayStation controller, that's square. This then brings it up in the hotbar palette, and we can now assign it by pressing the button combination we want it to be onto the bar. So again, just to make sure that that's clear, you can load stuff into this edit hotbar tray. You can press the button again to, you can press the button combination again to choose to delete something. And you can use square or your left face button to put stuff into the palette from a menu to then load it into a bar. It's essentially a holding space for you to transition stuff to the place you want it to be. So, how do we get to these secondary bars? Let's cover that. Getting to these secondary bars on my setup is important. So, in order to have this work, you need to have your cross hotbar control set to hold, not toggle and not mixed. It must be on hold. It's the only way that this is allowed to work. When you have that turned on, you then can turn on W cross hotbar display settings. So WX cross hotbar means that these are your right and left additional cross hotbars. The X just stands for cross. And you can even set a timer for how quickly you need to press the button or how quickly you can press the button multiple times to get to that hotbar. So for me, if I hold down right trigger, I'm getting the right half of my first bar here. If I double press my my trigger right to, R2, the trigger, I can get to my cross hotbar on that side. And I can do the same thing on the left side by going tap, tap, on left. But obviously, you know, I have set my timer to what works for me, what feels natural when I'm doing combat. It may take a bit of adjustment and figuring out on your own. I would recommend setting this where it allows you to position your additional cross hotbars separately from the main cross hotbar. And I will get to this custom page in 1 second. I just want to show you that when you are turn off system duty, so it's pretty much just hotbars. You can see you have the cross hotbar, which you can move. And then you also get the left and the right. So I'm going to revert those changes, but I have mine stacked incredibly tightly together and very small on the icons because I know what's on them now and I'm comfortable with them. I have definitely seen layouts where people have them much larger and have a specific cross hotbar in a specific section. Sorry, for additional cross hotbars in special sections, which is totally, reasonable to do. So you may notice that on my left cross hotbar is more astrologian abilities and skills. And on my right cross hotbar, I have a bunch of utility things. If you're not familiar with what these are, let me turn on the hotbar help. And you can now see that I have my key items. I have ready check, waymarks, countdown, my mount that I commonly use, my limit break, and command panel. And this specific section here is part of a hotbar that doesn't change when I change class. So I'm just going to change class, and you'll see that this stays exactly the same. And I'll cover how to make sure that happens every time. So let's go on to that. So in the custom section, we're going to skip these first ones, the expanded hold control. And we're going to show, okay, here's how you get to turn on the double tap to get to your additional cross hotbars. So here is also where I am saying what hotbar do I want to be pulling stuff from to show in this additional hotbar. So specifically, oops, forgot that I can't do that when I'm in the menu. Sorry. So specifically, if I go to my hotbar 2, you'll see that the right half of my hotbar 2 is the same as my double tap on the left here. And that is because it is actually pulling this exact hotbar and showing me just half of it. So showing that in the settings, you can see I've chosen cross hotbar 2, right side. You can choose the right or the left of any hotbar to show up as your cross hotbar additional piece, or left or right. So I have set up my hotbar number 6 to be my one that doesn't change between class. And where did I do that? Oh, under sharing. So basically under cross hotbar, bars 1 through 4 are unique to each class. Bars 5 through 8 will be the same no matter what class I have equipped. So let's then talk about the expanded hold controls. So this is a way to easily have access to, resorting myself back to bar number 1 as a reset. It's just a common thing I do in between things. Apologies. The expanded hold controls are basically saying, okay, you're holding down one button, but what if you held down the other trigger at the same time? So that was me starting with the right trigger and then holding down the left trigger. And that shows me part of my 8th hotbar. In fact, it actually shows you underneath. It says set 8 R1. So what this means is I started with the right trigger and I'm seeing part of my 8th hotbar. And on here, as you can see, I have a bunch of things I commonly use because it is very easy to hold one button, then another, and then press a face button to open my inventory, or to open my armory chest, or my character menu, my actions and traits, etc. Emotes. All of these things are things I use extremely commonly and want to have access to regardless of what class I have on, regardless of what kind of content I'm doing or where I am. This also applies if you hold the left trigger and then the right trigger. So if I was to look directly at my 8th hotbar, you'll see these are everything I have on here. And I can access either the right half or the left half, depending on my combination of buttons. This is something I set up by design, but it is very flexible and it would allow you to do any hotbar you wished and any side you wished. It doesn't have to be the same hotbar. And so you can really kind of go wild with it. But I just found personally that the 8th hotbar, I was putting all this stuff on here anyways. And I realized if I can just hold 2 buttons to see this section of stuff, it became incredibly helpful. So being able to quickly access Duty Finder, to quickly access my quest journal, etc., I think is incredibly helpful, as well as macros and such. Party list, friends list. Oops, that was wrong button first. So the one thing that will trip you up at first when you're learning is whether or not it's the right trigger into left trigger for the button you're looking for, or if it's left trigger into right trigger. And that just comes with practice. I'll be honest. However, whatever orientation of buttons you choose to go with for that, expanded hold control setup, if you use it a lot, it's going to become pretty solid muscle memory. It will mean that if you try to change them later, it's a bit rough to try and rewire that part of the brain, but is totally possible. So that covers the expanded hold controls and the double tap right and left bars. And then I have done some customization for when you draw and sheath your weapon, what hotbars it tries to swap to immediately. I've also done some, basically nothing for PvP, simply because I don't need it. But there is definitely lots of options to play with. Some people want it that when you've double tapped a trigger to get to an outside thing and you've hit a button, for it to automatically stop holding or stop targeting this this additional right side cross hotbar. And I personally found that to be more confusing than it was helpful, because there were times when, like on my healing class, I need to hit horoscope into Helios conjunction in order to complete the sort of combo of that. So I found it to be more helpful to not have it return, but that is entirely a personal preference and how you decide to set up your hotbar. Last part of this, just a bit of advice. I'd put all of your main buttons that you need to hit a lot on the face button side of your bar. So what I mean by that is these 4 buttons on the right side of each section, corresponding to the face buttons, being like on a PlayStation controller, being your triangle, circles, X, square, because these ones, the face buttons, are incredibly easy to hit while also moving your character, because you don't need your left finger, which is on the stick, moving your character, to be able to press these buttons, which can be problematic if you're trying to do things while moving. And that's why I put only things I need to really stand still for, or I need to think about using in places where I'd need to take my finger off of the stick in order to press the button. And because of that, that sort of informed my layout personally. And maybe there are things where you want to be able to hit them while you're turning the camera. So that can be important. The other thing is, as you can see, I mentioned briefly before that my additional left hotbar and my additional right hotbar, one of them is for class stuff and one of them is for all classes. And I did this on purpose because there were many classes I didn't have enough buttons to actually fill the space. And there were things that I didn't want to have to dig into multiple button presses to get to. So like sprint, I wanted that to be available to everything all the time. And for a lot of classes, I put my long cooldown abilities here. I didn't do that on Astro. Instead, those are on my second hotbar. So to change to my second hotbar in the middle of fight, I hold down again the right bumper and just hit circle. And that gives me all of my super long cooldowns over here. Obviously, with the reborn mode coming and the evolved mode stuff happening, we will see a dramatic decrease in the number of long cooldown or, you know, things managing for the 2-minute meta, of course. But I do believe that if I was setting up my hotbars fresh today, I would probably put my long cooldowns somewhere visible. So here on this double bar, or I would do what some other people do, and they go into their hotbar HUD layout. And as you can see, I've sort of turned off all my hotbars. But if I wanted to, I could turn on, say, hotbar 9 and slide it over here. And then I could put on one of my long cooldowns. So like, let's just say macrocosmos. We'd have to drag it out with the mouse, but you could put it somewhere with the normal hotbar. And that way it would be visible always, and you could see how much time you had left on your cooldowns. Obviously you won't be able to access this hotbar unless you're using keyboard or mouse, but it's more for the visual of being able to say, oh, I can tell now that my macrocosmos is on cooldown, or it's in the middle of its, its timer. And once it goes off, I can see that timer ticking down at all times, which for high-end rating is almost a must. Unless you have incredibly good sense of internal time. So that's something that I personally would change about my own layout. And I'm excited to see how things change with Reborn mode, of course, removing some of the synergy actions, meaning we'll probably end up with a few less buttons overall. But I do find that I only really need to change to the second bar when I'm doing, mitigation in general. And so because of that, I'm not constantly having to swap bars, because most of my abilities are available at all times. But my recommendation would be to set up your first bar, set up your second bar. Don't worry about the additional right and left until you've gotten your main bars set up. Practice going through the bars. Practice if you're going to do the hold into one and the other, do a bit of practice of that. Make sure that things are where you'd want them to be. And above all, it's a lot of relearning. And I think that would be the end of where I'd want to talk about hotbar stuff, but I will give you a few other general tips for controller use. So one is this actions and trait window is your best friend because anything that used to be a menu, you used to have the red dots in the bottom that was your, your entire main menu, is now available as buttons that you can use. So in here, we have a lot of things that became hotkeys. You can now add these to your hotbar directly. You can also pull up your currency menu direct from, a button and all sorts of other things that you're used to having be an option in a large menu is now its own button for the most part. And everything that was in character menu is available here. Everything that was in duty menu is available here, etc. This can be very helpful, but also you don't need all of these as buttons, especially if you have the actions and trait menu itself tied to a button like I do. It sometimes can be easier to say, okay, well, here's this thing. I know it was in this menu. Okay, here it is. I needed user macros, or I needed something from social and I know where it is in that menu. It's easier to make the transition when you have an analog for the thing that you used to know. The other last thing is they added this thing recently in extras called command panel. And this is essentially a hideaway window that shows up when you press the button. I have obviously loaded mine with a lot of buttons. It has 4 pages. Some of mine are broken right now because they're macros I haven't brought over. But there's a lot of things in here that, it starts off with a blank. It's all blank. You can customize it to whatever you want. And you might notice I actually have command panel button right here in my right press cross hotbar. And that's because there's so many things in here that I use constantly. Obviously teleport, obviously return, and all my mount stuff, and then all of my crafters and gatherers, all of my raiding stuff, my treasure map stuff, emotes, group pose, everything like that. You can kind of all pack a lot of stuff into here, and then when you exit out of it, it's out of your face and it doesn't take up space on your screen all the time. So I would recommend learning how to use this a bit. There's also, if you hold down triangle, you can move 2 slots at a time. Incredibly helpful. It means that for most things, it only takes 2 button presses or 3 if you're very unlucky to get to anything. So that is a big one. And then you may have already figured out, but in case you haven't, on most controllers, it is the right menu button. So on a PlayStation controller, there's like the 2 little like pill-shaped buttons next to the touchpad. The right side one will bring up what I call the big menu, but essentially this is the controller version of the line of red dots you usually have on the bottom right-hand corner. And this has all of your options as well. Very, very, very helpful. But yeah, I do believe that just about covers it. Feel free to experiment with your layout. But I'm just going to take a moment here and flip through each of my bars. So you can see what I have on it or what I don't have on it. And this is a class I have taken through Savage Raiding. There used to be a bunch more buttons on bar 7, but a lot of those got consolidated into my control panel here. which I'll just flip through these really fast. Oh yeah, and then these ones are for specifically command missions with your squadron. And then emotes are emotes. So that, I do believe, covers it. If you have clarifying questions on any of this, feel free to let me know. I'm always happy to help a fellow gamer get the accessibility they need in order to be able to play their favorite game regardless of life situation. So, means a lot to me, and I hope this was helpful for you. Bye! Happy gaming!